Welcome to According to Sam, folks. This is episode 348. Thank you for joining me. Hope you guys had a good weekend. I got a long podcast for you today. I got a lot to share that I want to get to everything. So let's get right into it. It's still talking about the assassination of Charlie Kirk. And today, the accused assassin, Tyler Robinson, was virtually back in court today. And I want to start with this clip that talks about what happened when Tyler Robinson was back in court today.
In Provo, Utah, the man accused of killing Charlie Kirk just made his second appearance before a judge. NBC's Morgan Chesky is outside that courthouse for us. Morgan, welcome. So what are we learning today?
Yeah, Alex, this was the second time that Tyler Robinson appeared before a judge. It was virtual, though, and everyone was anticipating that he would be here in person. However, at the last minute, Alex, his defense team requested that they take that virtual option instead. They wouldn't say as to why, but important to note here that county authorities have said that security surrounding that individual on your screen, 22-year-old Tyler Robinson, is a definite concern.
They probably didn't want, now that I think I just thought it is, but they probably didn't want a Jack Ruby to come out and do what happened to Lee Harvey Oswald when Lee Harvey Oswald was making his first appearance to court.
It was virtual, though, and everyone was anticipating that he would be here in person. However, at the last minute, Alex, his defense team requested that they take that virtual option instead. They wouldn't say as to why, but important to note here that county authorities have said that security surrounding that individual on your screen, 22-year-old Tyler Robinson, is a definite concern going forward here as this case moves through the legal system. This was called a waiver hearing, Alex, and essentially what it did was it let us know who his defense team was, and it gave them the option of waiving their right to a preliminary hearing, which would expedite this case forward to an arraignment. In short, it would confirm probable cause. That did not happen today, Alex. His defense team requested additional time, 30 days, so they could go over the state's evidence, which has been described as voluminous. And then they have this next hearing set for October 30th, whereupon they could then decide whether or not to waive their right to that preliminary hearing. I did have a chance to ask several questions to lead counsel for Robinson as she left the building. Her name is Kathy Nestor. She is a veteran public defender here in Utah with more than 60 jury trials to her name. She said no comment when asked about the state of mind of Robinson, no comment on whether or not he's going to be passing a mental health evaluation so he can be moved to a different part of Utah County Jail than he is currently being held, and no comment as to his reaction so far to being charged with aggravated murder, among other charges, in the fatal shooting of Charlie Kirk back on September 10th.
So he hasn't been arraigned yet, and his lawyers want to review all of the evidence that they have on him. Who knows if he's going to plead guilty or not guilty at the arraignment. Now, remember in the last podcast, we talked about the FBI, and it's important to understand a lot of people are blaming the FBI and saying that the FBI is not being forthcoming. The FBI is lying to us. Folks, you have to understand that the state of Utah is running this case, that the FBI has not taken over this case into the murder of Charlie Kirk. And the director of the FBI, as we said in the last podcast, put out a post last Sunday saying that they're looking into everything. They're still the FBI is still doing their own independent investigation from the investigation that the state of Utah is doing. Kash Patel says that we are meticulously, the word is meticulously, I butchered that word in the last podcast. My dyslexia kicked in, but we are meticulously investigating theories and questions, including the location from where the shot was taken, the possibility of accomplices, text message confessions related to and related conversations, Discord chats, the angle, the shot of the bullet impact, the weapon, how it was transported, hand gestures observed as potential signals near Charlie at the time of the assassination, and the visitors to the shooter's house. We're looking into all this. We're looking into accomplices. We're looking into where the shot was taken. The FBI is not taking for granted that Tyler Robinson took the shot. They said they're looking into where the shot came from. So you have to understand that the state of Utah is running this case. And we're going to talk about the state of Utah today because the state of Utah is a very unique state. Despite the establishment clause, as the liberals like to call it, the state of Utah is very unique because it is a state that was founded by the Mormon Church. And the Mormon Church still has a lot of control to this day of the state of Utah. The Mormon Church is very important in the state of Utah. They founded the state of Utah. They run everything in the state of Utah, and we're going to talk about them today. Now, there was something very interesting that happened over the weekend in the Mormon LDS Church. They like to call themselves the Latter-day Saints. They don't like the name Mormon, but the Latter-day Saints, their prophet, everyone's calling him the President Russell Nelson, but he is the prophet. There have been 17 prophets in the LDS religion, starting with Joseph Smith, then Brigham Young, and then all the way to Russell Nelson was the 17th prophet president, and he died on Saturday at 101 years old. Russell Nelson, who was the latest prophet, the 17th prophet of the LDS Church, had 57 children and 167 grandchildren. And this is something that you need to understand about the Mormon religion that we're going to get in today. I'm not bashing the Mormon religion. I'm just going to get into their theology, what they believe, because you have to understand this, that the LDS Church teaches that on a faraway planet where God dwells near the star Kolob, there are all these spiritual babies that are just spirits, and they need humans. This is what they believe. They need humans to have babies, physical babies in the physical form, for these spiritual babies to be incarnated into, and that these spirit babies that live on this planet near the star Kolob, that all of these spirit babies are there waiting for humans to have babies on earth, so these spirit babies can be incarnated into these physical bodies. And that's why Mormons believe have believed in polygamy in the past, because they believe that you need to have large families, as many children as you can, so these spirit babies can incarnate the physical bodies once you have these babies. So this is part of what they believe. And the last prophet that just died on Saturday, he had 57 children and 167 grandchildren. Now, he died at age 101 on Saturday, and the new prophet is going to be this guy. This is going to be the new prophet, and his name is Dallin Oaks, and Dallin Oaks is 93 years old. So it's going to be interesting to see how long he is the new prophet, but he is going to be the 18th prophet, Dallin Oaks, and so that happened on Saturday, that the 17th prophet passed away at 101 years old, and this is going to be the new prophet, the 18th prophet of the LDS Church. Now, on Sunday, there was a terrorist attack on a Mormon church in Michigan. A Iraq war veteran drove his vehicle into this Mormon church in Michigan and then set the church on fire. There was at least one person killed, and then I think that the Iraq veteran was also killed. But cops, this article from the New York Post, cops probing whether Michigan church shooting has ties to Mormon leader's death. So they're investigating if this terrorist attack on this Mormon church on Sunday had anything to do with the death of Russell, the 17th prophet. Very interesting. Very interesting stuff going on. Donald Trump came out and saying that this terrorist attack on Sunday at this Mormon church is evidence of a string of attacks on Christians. There's people that were saying, well, Mormons are not Christians. They don't believe what Christians believe. And then the Mormon senator from the state of Utah, Mike Lee, put out this post yesterday, and he's challenging the fact that all these people are saying that the Mormon church and Mormons, Latter-day Saints, are not Christians. And Mike Lee says, as a lifelong member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, I'm Christian. As a Latter-day Saints, we believe Jesus is the only begotten Son, born of the Virgin Mary, and he cites a scripture in the Bible, Luke 1:35. He is the creator and God of the Old Testament and the Savior of the New Testament. Cites another scripture, John 1:1-3. And this is the gospel. Luke's in the Gospels. John's in the Gospels. He lived a sinless life and took upon himself the sins of all mankind and atoned for us through his suffering and death. Peter, this is the Epistle of Peter 2:22. And then I guess this is from the Book of Mormon, this passage here. He rose on the third day, ensuring our resurrection and eternal life through faith in him. 1 Corinthians 15:20-22. He is the only way to salvation, Acts 4:12. We worship Jesus Christ, follow his teachings, and take upon his name through baptism and weekly sacraments. The Book of Mormon, alongside the Bible, testifies of his divinity and mission. As our church's name declares, Jesus Christ is at the heart of our religion. He is the author and finisher of our faith, Hebrews, which is another New Testament epistles. If that doesn't make us Christians, I don't know what does. Well, he cites a lot of scriptures from the Bible that he says that makes them Christians. It's not these passages that people have trouble with in believing that Mormons are Christians. It's the Book of Mormon and what the Book of Mormon says, which he says alongside the Bible. It's what's the Book of Mormon says and what you guys believe that comes out of the Book of Mormon that people have questions with. And that's what we're going to talk about a little bit today. Now, some of you may say, well, I thought we were going to talk about the Jews today. I thought we were going to get into Jewish history because I said in the last podcast that we're going to get into a series of podcasts talking about Jewish history and talking about the Jews. Well, hold on, because we're gonna make this work because we are talking about the Jews. We're going to talk about the Mormon religion today, but the Mormon religion starts with the Jews. What the Mormon Book of Mormon says about the Jews and the founding of the Mormon faith has everything to do with the Jews. Now, in the next podcast, we're going to get into the Babylonian siege and the Babylonian captivity, where the Neo-Babylonian Empire, which we talked about a little bit when we talked about the Tower of Babel and this poster from the Council of Europe and how they put out this poster reconstructing the Tower of Babel. We talked about the Freemasons, how the Freemasons believe that the Master Masons and their knowledge of mathematics and geometry and how to build were part of the construction of the Tower of Babel. And after God destroyed the Tower of Babel, these mystics and they took their mystery knowledge of mathematics and geometry and how to build, and they passed along this secret knowledge all the way to Hiram Abiff, who was the person who managed the construction of Solomon's temple, using this mystery knowledge and this mystery, knowledge of geometry and how to build things. We talked about all of that, and we're going to get back into that in the next podcast. But the Neo-Babylonian Empire was created by Nebuchadnezzar, and Nebuchadnezzar was recreating the ancient Babylonian Empire that was founded by Hammurabi, and Nebuchadnezzar recreated everything from the ancient Babylonian Empire and creating the Neo-Babylonian Empire. And in around 600 BC, the Babylonians under Nebuchadnezzar, they seized Judah, and they destroyed Solomon's temple, and they took all of these Jews into captivity into Babylon, and it's called the Babylonian captivity. We're going to talk about this more, the Babylonian captivity, what happened in the next podcast. But this happened in the siege of Jerusalem, 587 BC, and this is when Nebuchadnezzar destroyed the Solomon's temple, destroyed the city of Jerusalem, and took all of these Jews into captivity into Babylon. Well, Mormons believe that before this happened, the siege of Jerusalem, that there were Jews that left the kingdom of Israel. And this is something else that you need to understand, is that there were two different Hebrew kingdoms at this time, and they were separated into two. If you don't know, there are 12 tribes of Hebrew tribes that make up the tribes. The Hebrew tribes make up the Jewish people, but Jew mainly relates to the southern kingdom, which was Judah. That's where we get the word Jew. It comes from Judah, and Judah only made up two tribes, the tribe of Judah and the tribe of Benjamin. The other 10 tribes were a separate kingdom, the kingdom of Israel, and they were separated to the north. So you had the 10 tribes to the north, and then you had the 2 tribes to the south, Judah and Benjamin. And the 10 tribes to the north, they were conquered by the Assyrians prior to the Babylonians conquering the 2 tribes to the south, which included Jerusalem and Solomon's temple there. Now, when the Assyrians conquered the kingdom of Israel, many of the people from the kingdom of Israel came down into Judah and became part of the kingdom of Judah. So this is what you got to understand, that prior to the Babylonians conquering and destroying Solomon's temple and conquering the kingdom of Judah and taking the Jewish people into captivity into Babylon, the Assyrians had already destroyed the kingdom of Israel to the north, which were separated. They were separated. They were, warring factions. They weren't a collective group of all 12 tribes as they were under King David and under Solomon. After Solomon's death is when the tribes basically split up, 10 tribes to the north, 2 tribes to the south. What Mormons believe is before the Babylonians came and destroyed Solomon's temple and took Jews into captivity into Babylon, that there were a group of Jews from the northern kingdom, the kingdom of Israel, and they got in boats and they sailed across the Mediterranean Sea. They sailed all the way to the Americas, and they came to America before Christopher Columbus, around the time of 600 BC. I want to play this clip that talks a little bit about what Mormons believe about these Jews who sailed away from what is present day Israel. They sailed through the Mediterranean Sea and came all the way to the Americas prior to Christopher Columbus, this is 600 BC. This clip gets into everything.
Israel, 600 BC, 2,092 years before Columbus. Elsewhere in the world, Pompeii is founded in Italy, later to be destroyed by the eruption of Mount Vesuvius. and the Mayan culture is flourishing in Mesoamerica. In Israel, Jerusalem will soon be taken over by the Babylonians and the Temple of Solomon destroyed. Ancient Hebrews are fleeing, but where to?
The thought of early Hebrews coming to the New World has been a topic of a great deal of discussion going all the way back to the 19th century.
The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is based in part on the Book of Mormon, which tells how a prophet named Lehi and his sons built a boat and sailed it to America around 600 BC. Artistic renderings often depict it as a type of ark with sails, but there was another type of ship Israelites were using at that time.
The Roman ships that the Hebrews would have used had they made such a voyage would be solid, built, round-formed hulls.
I like how he says that the Roman ships, this would have been centuries before the Roman Empire, so they wouldn't have been Roman ships.
At that time.
The Roman ships that the Hebrews would have used had they made such a voyage would be solid, built, round-formed hulls, heavily framed, that is, thick-ribbed, carrying a square sail with a high elevated bow and stern, capable of carrying all sorts of cargo and people.
Lehi's alleged route would have taken him from Oman through the Indian and Pacific Oceans to the Central American coast. Even using ocean currents, the drifters suggest it would have taken 580 days. That's more than a year and a half.
580 days is what it would have taken for these Hebrews to leave present-day Israel and sail all the way through the Indian Ocean to South America, Central America, wherever they believed that they landed.
Even using ocean currents, the drifters suggest it would have taken 580 days. That's more than a year and a half.
I don't think there's a question of ships making it. A vessel can make it with dead people. The question is whether people would make it in that voyage if it took a great deal of time or they had no way of knowing where.
So this is very central to the Mormon Latter-day Saints theology, is that these Jews came to the Americas, to the New World, around 600 BC on a ship prior to the Babylonian invasion of Jerusalem. Johnny Harris is a former member of the LDS Church, and he makes videos about the church, the Mormon Church, and this is a video where he explains this theology, and it's not really theology, the story from the Book of Mormon about how Lehi, this Hebrew from Israel before the Babylonian captivity, sailed all the way to the Americas. I want you to listen to what Johnny says.
Okay, so let's be clear on what Joseph Smith said the Book of Mormon is. It's not what a lot of people say, which is like the Mormon Bible. The book tells the story of a group of Jews in Jerusalem in around 600 BC. They're told to leave the city before it gets destroyed. So they leave the city, they walk in the desert for a while, probably to like Oman is what a lot of Mormons think, and then they build a boat and travel across the ocean for a very long time until they reach the Americas, somewhere in like North, Central, or South America. The foundation of the story is about these brothers of the original family who like eventually split off and they like hate each other, and they grow up into these two different civilizations, the Nephites and the Lamanites, who are always fighting with each other, and there's all these prophets and there's all this drama that happens. And the introduction to my Book of Mormon says the Lamanites, these people who came over from Jerusalem, are, quote, the principal ancestors of the American Indian.
The principal ancestors of the American Indians, that the Native Americans that were here in the Americas, who Columbus, when he came over, and when the British colonial forces came over, French colonial forces came over, the Native Americans who they met are the principal ancestors of these Hebrews that came from present-day Israel in 600 BC, and they are the ancestors of Native Americans, the principal ancestors. Now, we know through archaeological evidence that many of these natives came over from Asia over the Bering Strait, when the Bering Strait was frozen during the the last ice age. We know that through archaeological evidence that is what happens. But this is what Mormons believe, that the principal ancestors of Native Americans, all Native Americans in North America, Central America, South America, are the principal ancestors of these Hebrews that sailed over from present-day Israel, is what is in the Book of Mormon.
To my Book of Mormon says, the Lamanites, these people who came over from Jerusalem, are, quote, the principal ancestors of the American Indians. And a few years ago, they did change that to the Lamanites being among the ancestors of the American Indians. But yeah, the point is that the Book of Mormon is a history of these Jews turned indigenous Americans. And unsurprisingly, there's a whole community of believers who work to validate that this is actually a historic record. But no, in reality, there's no archaeological, genetic, or linguistic evidence that supports the Book of Mormon's assertion that Jewish people migrated to the Americas around 600 BC. For believers, the most important part of this book is the climax of the whole thing, where in 33 AD, Jesus, having recently been crucified over in the old world in Jerusalem, gets resurrected over there and comes to visit the people in America, which is where this painting came from. This is a painting that is hanging in a lot of LDS churches. It shows Jesus Christ among the ancient civilizations of the Americas. Yeah. Some pretty wild stories. So yeah, I know we're all over the place, and we'll get back to Joseph Smith's life for a second, but as someone who has read this book dozens of times, I can tell you that when you're a believer, this is a really compelling piece of work. You can read these pages, and you can read about the stories and the lessons and the metaphors, and you can take a lot from it. And the biggest thing that you take from it is that it is proof that Joseph Smith was actually called of God to prepare the world for the second coming, that he was a legitimate prophet.
All right, so let's talk about the second coming of Jesus and what Mormons believe. Now, if you understand the Mormon faith, the Latter-day Saints, it is a collection of two different sources. It all comes from the Bible and the Torah. I mean, it's a lot of it is just, copy and paste, just taken directly from the Hebrew scriptures. They take a lot of the symbolism from the Hebrew scriptures. They call their they have churches, but then they also have temples. What does temples make you think of? The Temple of Solomon, the Temple of Nehemiah. The Jews have the temples over there. So the LDS Church has temples. The temples are very sacred. They have many temples. This was the very first temple in Ohio, but there's many Mormon temples. They all have the angel Moroni blowing a horn facing east. All of these temples all over. This is a temple in Oklahoma. This is a temple in Oregon, Moroni with blowing his horn. They all have Moroni on top, and different temples all over the world, temples. But again, the first temple was built there in Ohio, the one that I showed you. They have a temple in Salt Lake City, which I've been to, but I haven't been inside. They don't let you inside the temple unless you are a practicing Mormon in good standing with the church. They have temple garments that you have to wear. All this stuff comes from the Hebrew text, the temples. So this is a major part of the Mormon faith. Many temples. And the other place that the Mormon faith derives a lot of their theology and their religious practices comes from Freemasonry, because Joseph Smith was a Freemason. If you know anything about Freemasonry, and you can put it together that a lot of this stuff in the Mormon faith comes from Freemasonry, and it also comes from the Hebrew faith, the Jewish faith. Very important that you understand this. Temples. They have the tabernacle there in Salt Lake City. Tabernacle. And the tabernacle is in front of this temple, which was built in the 19th century, late 19th century. Tabernacle. The word tabernacle comes from the Jewish tabernacle. The Jewish tabernacle was a tent system that God commanded the Jewish people to construct as they were wandering through the desert before they made it into the promised land. They had this tent system where they had the Ark of the Covenant in the center, and the priests, the Levites, were in the center of the tabernacle, and they had the other 11 tribes that God commanded to position themselves around the tabernacle. The tabernacle is Hebrew. It's Hebrew. It's part of the Hebrew theology, but the Jews create their own, or the Mormons create their own tabernacle. So they're not only taking the temple, they're taking the tabernacle, and they're taking all this stuff that comes from the Hebrew Bible and the Hebrew theology. That in essence, they are copying the Jewish religion and the Hebrew faith along with Freemasonry. All right. So Jackson County, Missouri, in Missouri, is a very important and significant place to the LDS Church and the Mormon faith. We'll read a little bit of this. Jackson County, Missouri, particularly Independence, holds significant in historical importance for the Latter-day Saints, being designated as the center of the place of Zion and the site of the future temple. So they have all these temples, hundreds of temples all over the world. Temples, but there's going to be a future temple that they build in Jackson County, Missouri, particularly Independence. They're going to build a temple there, and this temple is going to be the site of what they call the New Jerusalem. They call this place in Independence Zion. So technically, Mormons are Zionists. Mormons are Zionists. They just believe that Zion is not in Jerusalem, not in Israel. They believe that Zion is in Jackson County, Missouri. That's what they believe, that Zion is in Jackson County, Missouri, and that they are going to build this final temple there in Jackson County, Missouri. And that when Jesus comes back and makes his return, he's going to make his return to this temple site in Jackson County, Missouri. They're Zionists. They believe that Jackson County, Missouri, Independence is Zion. Revelations in early community in 1831, Joseph Smith, founder of LDS Church, received revelations designating Independence, Missouri as the center place for the city of Zion. This area was intended to be the gathering place for the saints and a location for a future temple. Independent Visitors Center today interprets the early Latter-day Saints community that formed the city during the 1830s. And they have the lot there, everything ready for them to construct this final temple for the return of Jesus when Jesus returns to Jackson County, Missouri. Temple lot located in Independence is historically significant, as it was the first site dedicated for the construction of the Temple of Latter-day Saints movement. Joseph Smith dedicated this site in 1831 and is believed to be the location of the Garden of Eden, according to LDS teachings, the area to be the focal point for Latter-day Saints, with various denominations claiming parts of the land. So they believe Jesus is coming back to Zion, not to Israel, but to Jackson County, Missouri. And this is going to be the place of the final temple where the New Jerusalem is, where Jesus comes back. This is part of the Mormon faith, the Latter-day Saints. Zion, Latter-day Saints. Within the Latter-day Saints movement, Zion often used to connote the association of righteous, the association of the righteous. This association would practice a form of communitarian economics called United Order, which is meant to ensure that all members maintain an acceptable quality of life. Read this paragraph. Latter-day Saints also believe the construction of the New Jerusalem on the American continent, which is also referred to as Zion. They're Zionists. Latter-day Saints believe that the New Jerusalem will be built in Jackson County, Missouri by a remnant of the house of Joseph, assisted by repentant Gentiles. So Zion to the LDS Church is Jackson County, Missouri, particularly Independence, where they're going to build the final temple on the temple lot, and that's where Jesus is going to return. All right, let's talk about the lost tribe of Dan. The tribe of Dan is one of the 12 tribes, the Hebrew tribes. Dan was one of Jacob. Jacob, his name is changed to Israel, and Jacob becomes the founder of the Hebrew people, Israel, 12 tribes, 12 sons. And as I told you, that the 12 tribes split after the reign of Solomon, 2 tribes to the south, which were Judah and Benjamin. And then you had the other 10 tribes to the north. So Dan would have been one of the tribes to the north that lived in the kingdom of Israel. And this is something you have to understand, that when these tribes split after Solomon's death, and Rehoboam becomes the king after Solomon, and Jeroboam becomes the king in the north after the 12 tribes split, 10 to the north, 2 to the south. You have to understand that the Solomon's temple was in Judah. So there was no temple for the 10 tribes in the north to worship at, and they became kind of religiously and spiritually lost because they didn't have the temple. The temple is the center of the Jewish faith. You have to have the temple because that's where God dwells in the holiest holies, and you have to have the annual sacrifices, blood sacrifices for the remission of sin. So the temple was very important. So because the tribes were split and the temple was in Judah, and the 10 tribes in the north didn't have the temple, they became more, spiritually lost without the temple. It becomes very important. Well, the tribe of Dan, which was one of the 10 tribes to the north, we're going to talk about who the tribe of Dan is now. And I have a few clips about the tribe of Dan. Take a listen.
Did you know that some of the most shocking archaeological discoveries of our time point to the tribe of Dan establishing colonies across Europe, sailing to distant lands, and potentially founding entire civilizations?
Sailing to distant lands. The tribe of Dan, they were maritime people. They were sailors. The only of the 12 tribes that the Bible speaks of that built ships and sailed across the Mediterranean, sailed into Europe. Now, do I believe that the tribe of Dan came all the way to the Americas? I don't believe that, but I believe that Mormons believe that, and the LDS Church believes that. But you have to understand that the tribe of Dan, that they were a maritime people and they were seafaring.
Sailing to distant lands and potentially founding entire civilizations. That's right. While most people think the 12 tribes stayed put in the promised land, the descendants of Dan were exploring the world, leaving traces of their presence from Ireland to Ethiopia, from Greece to the Americas. But here's what will truly astound you. The Bible itself contains cryptic warnings about Dan's future, dark prophecies that suggest this tribe would become something far different from their brothers. Genesis 49:17 declares that Dan will be a serpent by the roadside, a viper along the path. Deuteronomy 33 lists blessings for 11 tribes, but Dan is described as a lion's cub leaping out from Bashan. These aren't just poetic descriptions, they're prophetic warnings. And when we reach the book of Revelation, the final revelation of God's plan, something chilling happens. The 12 tribes are listed, sealed for protection in the end times. Judah is there, Benjamin is there, Levi, Reuben, Simeon, all accounted for. But Dan is conspicuously, mysteriously absent.
It's very important that in the book of Revelations, which is explains the Christian eschatology and the end times events for the Christian faith, there is and this is a revelation of Jesus Christ that is given to the Apostle John, the book of Revelation in the Bible. There is a list of the 12 tribes, and Dan is missing from this list of the 12 tribes in the book of Revelation. Very important.
In their place stands Manasseh, Joseph's son, filling the gap left by the missing tribe. What happened to Dan? Where did they go? And why were they removed from God's final blessing? I invite you to stay with me until the very end.
All right, so I'm not going to be able to get into all of this, but I challenge you to do your own research on the tribe of Dan. Very, very interesting, the tribe of Dan. This is another clip about the seafaring people, the maritime people, the Hebrew people, the tribe of Dan, and some of the evidence of Dan throughout Europe. Take a listen.
In Hebrew, there are no vowels, so the name Dan is written DN, or its Hebrew equivalent, so words like Dan, Din, Don, Dun, Den, or DN correspond to the name of Dan. Just take a look at the names of the rivers of Europe. We have the Danube, the Dnieper, the Daniester, the Danau, the Daci, the Davy, the Dan, the Don, the Udon, the Eridon, and thousands of others, Dans and Dons, of ancient and early geography. However, it is not just limited to rivers, but also towns, cities, settlements, and as we will find out, even entire nations would bear the name of Dan. Greece wasn't the only place with a people called Dan. The early Irish history also tells us of a people called the Tuatha De Danann, which literally means the people of Dan. They were said to be descended from a Dana, which is obviously Dan. They arrived in several waves of migrations, roughly between 1200 and 800 BC. Now this would be around the Judges period, and when we examine the text of the Book of the Judges, this fits perfectly. The Song of Deborah and Barak, during the ongoing battle, it asked, why did Dan remain in ships? And Dan abode in ships. Dan did not participate, so what were they up to? The territory of the tribe of Dan had a major seaport, Joppa, giving them easy access to...
This is how the tribes were split during the time of David and during the time of Solomon, when this is before they split 10 tribes to the north, making up the kingdom of Israel, 2 tribes to the south, making up the kingdom of Judah. Before that, they lived among themselves, the 12 tribes together, but they had their own separate land. And the Danites, the people that descended from Dan, had a position that was right on the Mediterranean Sea. So that's how they eventually become a maritime people, building ships, going out into the sea, exploring other regions. So it's very important to understand about Dan.
In ships. Dan did not participate, so what were they up to? The territory of the tribe of Dan had a major seaport, Joppa, giving them easy access to ships, and some must have been seafarers. Evidently, some chose to migrate rather than get involved in the battles, and some must have reached the coast of Ireland. Upon their arrival, they conquered the Furbolgs, a race of people who were living in Ireland at the time, who likely were Japhethites. The Danites ruled Ireland from then on until the arrival of the Malaysians, who were another branch of the Israelites. They had several battles until peace was established, but from then on, Ireland was ruled by the Malaysian kings. This demonstrates how far and wide the Danites were traveling to. The Viper's Trail was not just the rivers, but many towns and settlements were also named after Dan. In Northern Ireland, we have Donegal, which means Fort of Dan, and in Scotland, we have the River Don. Throughout Europe, we have many guideposts and waymarks left by Dan. The city Dunkirk, meaning Church of Dan, Dundee, Dunbar, Dunraven, Edinburgh, and even London. If anything, this demonstrates that the tribe of Dan were continuously migrating into Europe. So did the tribe of Dan ever claim a country for themselves? Is there any land in the world named after Dan? Denmark, the name of the modern country in Europe north of Germany, literally means Dan's mark, Dan's land, Dan's last resting place.
So he makes the case in this video that the Danish people, that they are descendants, and that region was founded by the Hebrew tribe of Dan, one of the 12 tribes, Hebrew tribes that relate back to the Hebrew people. The Danes are descendants from Dan, is what they make. And he makes a very strong case about the Danube River, all these things that are named after Dan. And they were a seafaring people who traveled by ships. Very important that you understand the tribe of Dan and who the tribe of Dan are, because again, the tribe of Dan is missing in the list of the 12 tribes in the book of Revelation. This is a biblical scholar, and he gets into a little bit about the 12 tribes, really 14 tribes. He explains all of that and why the tribe of Dan is missing from the list of tribes in the book of Revelation.
There are 12 tribes that God, they're the 12 sons of Jacob. So Jacob has 12 sons. And those sons become the 12 tribes. But Manasseh, actually, one of the sons is Joseph. He's one of the 12. And Joseph has two sons, Manasseh and Ephraim. So what is really interesting, and I will say that I've thought about this for decades, when you look at the lists of the tribes, and there are many places, the tribes are, all the way through the Pentateuch, the tribal names, but also they're found in heaven, in the foundations. They're also found in the millennium descriptions of the minor prophets. And what you find is no two lists exactly agree. It's almost like an alphabet with 14 names, because we have the 12 sons plus Manasseh plus Ephraim, the two sons of Joseph. So there are actually 14 tribal names, because in the monarchy, there's a tribe of Ephraim. They get an allotment, and there's a tribe of Ephraim. So Manasseh and Ephraim get, and Joseph doesn't, Joseph's mentioned as one of the tribes, but he doesn't get a tribal allotment. His two sons get. So it's almost like he got a double portion of the tribal. But what I say is that the tribes, there actually are 14 names. It's like alphabet soup. And sometimes out of the pot of 14, God picks the original 12 sons of Jacob, which would not have Manasseh and Ephraim. Other times, God knocks out Dan. And that was Scott's original question. And why would the Lord knock Dan out? And let me just show you one reason. If you want to look in the book of Judges, Dan, so Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, Joshua, Judges. But what happens is in chapter 17 and 18 of Judges, we find that Dan, more so than almost any other tribe, Dan becomes associated earliest of all the 12 tribes with idolatry. And it appears, and as you read the text, it's Micah and the Danites, and this guy from this tribe, from Ephraim, it says in verse 1, whose name was Micah, gets some money, makes an idol, and then the Danites want it, and they adopt Micah's idolatry. So one man in chapter 18 influences a whole tribe, and this whole tribe of Dan is thought of among all the tribes as apostate, idol worshiping. And originally their tribal allotment was down, closer to Jerusalem in the south, and they didn't like it down there. And they moved, the tribe of Dan moved all the way to the north, up north of the Sea of Galilee. And they moved up, if you read here, this tells about it, how they, in verse 27 of chapter 18, the things Mike had made, the priests who belonged to him, they went to Laish. And that's up north of the Sea of Galilee and to the west. It's kind of in the northwest of the land of Israel. But the quick answer for you, Scott, is that depending on what God is wanting to communicate, he uses differing lists. And let me just mention the foundations of the city. When you get to Revelation chapter 21, it lists off that in verse 12, great and high wall with 12 gates and 12 angels at the gates, and the names that were written on it were the names of the 12 tribes of the children of Israel. Now, it's interesting, which 12 are they going to be? And I would assume that when God reverts back to the tribal list, he follows the original descendants of Jacob. But when you talk about the 12 tribes as far as the inheritance of the land of Israel, Joseph is knocked out, Manasseh and Ephraim are there. But when you look at the millennium, Dan is knocked out of the list, and Joseph is put back in. But when you get to heaven, it appears that Dan is back. And for that reason, let me show you in Revelation chapter 7, it says, here's the 12 tribes. And you notice that in the 12 tribe list of the 144,000, verse 5 says, here are the 12 tribes: Judah, Reuben, verse 6, or Gad, verse 6, Asher, Naphtali, Manasseh. Manasseh? So Manasseh is not one of the 12.
So Manasseh replaces Dan. Dan is not in that list. And Dan is very significant because, like he says, Dan is associated with idolatry, and all the tribes. Like I said, we'll get into more of this in the next podcast. All the tribes participated in some form of idolatry, but Dan is most closely associated with idolatry to the point to where in this 144,000 in the book of Revelation that Dan is not mentioned. Very cryptic, very important. All right. So every tribe is associated with a animal, and this goes back to the blessing that Jacob gives to his sons, which those blessings correspond to an animal. Like we've all heard of the lion of the tribe of Judah. Judah is associated with the lion. Well, Dan is associated with the snake. Ephraim with the bull. Manasseh, a unicorn. Benjamin, a wolf. Naphtali is a female deer. A Gad, a goat, or a lion. So they all have their different animals that they're associated with, but it's important to understand that Dan is associated with the serpent, with the snake. This is actually the verse in the 49th chapter, 17th verse of Genesis, where Jacob is pronouncing this blessing on Dan, and he says, Dan will be a snake by the roadside, a viper along the path that bites the horse's heel so that the rider tumbles backwards. So Dan is associated with a snake, with a serpent. And you have to understand too that 2025, this year, on the Chinese zodiac, the Chinese zodiac is associated with all these different animals, and 2025, this year, is the year of the snake. All right, that brings us to the movie Snake Eyes. And a lot of people have been relating this movie Snake Eyes to the murder of Charlie Kirk. Many articles have been written about this. Why is the 1998 movie Snake Eyes with Nicolas Cage trending? Eerie similarities with Charlie Kirk's shooting emerge as conspiracies erupt online. Snake Eyes, the year of the snake. Dan being associated with the serpent, the snake. Very important. Here's another article. Newsweek. Charlie Kirk theories erupt over Nicolas Cage film Snake Eyes. What are the similarities with this movie Snake Eyes? Well, I watched this movie Snake Eyes yesterday, and boy, there's some doozies in there. This is the Patrick Bet-David show, and they go into talking about this movie Snake Eyes and some relationships to Snake Eyes and the Charlie Kirk murder. Take a listen.
There was a movie in 1998 called Snake Eyes with Nicolas Cage. I'm pretty sure some of you guys have seen this. In the movie, they're at a boxing match. A politician is assassinated in the movie, and his name is Charles Kirkland. Okay, think about Charlie Kirk. This is very, very weird. Okay, he was shot on the left side of his neck. The film takes place on September 10th. Rob, that's the
date of the fight.
No, this is what we were talking about. This is what we were talking about yesterday. Rob,
so the movie is called Snake Eyes. There is a politician who is assassinated in the movie Snake Eyes. He's not only a politician, he's the Secretary of Defense. The plot of the movie is that there's a plot to a defense contractor company is trying to get this missile defense system passed by the Secretary of Defense to defend Israel. They frame a Palestinian terrorist. He's framed a Palestinian terrorist for assassinating Charles Kirkland. Charles Kirkland is shot in the right side of his neck, the same place that Charlie Kirk is, where they tell us he was shot, in the neck on the left side. His name is Charles Kirkland. He's a politician. The movie's called Snake Eyes. And this is crazy. A lot of people are saying that this is just obvious predictive programming. Charles Kirkland is the defense secretary. This is him. He's shot in the neck, assassinated, and he's assassinated by this Palestinian. Well, they framed this Palestinian assassin. The Palestinian assassin actually does shoot Charles Kirkland, but it's a setup by these people that are working for this defense contractor. And it's just some crazy stuff. Just like he says here, the marquee, this is the marquee. They're at this fight. The marquee, September 10th is the date on this. September 10th is the date that Charlie Kirk was assassinated, on September 10th. The fighter in the ring, his name is Tyler. Who's the person who shot Charlie Kirk? Tyler Robinson. Tyler in the fighter in the movie, this is the marquee, is called the Executioner. Tyler the Executioner is the fighter. The fight happens on September 10th when Charles Kirkland is assassinated by being shot in the neck. This is all very strange. The movie's called Snake Eyes again.
Is assassinated in the movie, and his name is Charles Kirkland. Okay, think about Charlie Kirk. This is very, very weird. Okay, he was shot on the left side of his neck. The film takes place on September 10th. Rob, that's the
date of the fight.
No,
this is what we were talking about yesterday.
This is what we were talking about yesterday. Rob, that's the poster. And then the boxer who's in on the plan, who's doing a diversion, he wakes up on the ring. His name is Tyler, like Tyler Robinson, and he's called the Executioner. Okay,
Jesus.
Weird. And then the tropical storm that hits in the film
This is very important.
called Hurricane Jezebel. And
the tropical storm, so this fight is happening in the middle of a tropical storm hurricane. They go back and forth calling it a tropical storm or a hurricane. She calls it Hurricane Jezebel at first, but then they go back and call it tropical storm Jezebel. Jezebel, who is Jezebel? Jezebel is the queen of a later king of the kingdom of Israel. King Ahab is married to Queen Jezebel, and Jezebel leads the people of the kingdom of Israel into apostasy and worshiping Baal, and Baal being this occultish, a Mesopotamian god. Jezebel leads the people in Israel. Jezebel leads the people of Israel into the worship of Baal, her and King Ahab. That's who Jezebel is, biblical figure. So the hurricane in the movie Snake Eyes is called Hurricane Jezebel, and they go back and forth calling it a tropical storm and hurricane, but Jezebel. Also, something you should know about Jezebel. There is a magazine called Jezebel, and Jezebel magazine put this article out, which they've deleted now, Jezebel, where they talk about how they paid witches to curse Charlie Kirk prior to him being assassinated. Jezebel article, we paid some Etsy witches to curse Charlie Kirk, Jezebel. And the hurricane in the movie is called Jezebel.
Yes, this is what we were talking about yesterday. Rob, that's the poster. And then the boxer who's in on the plan, who's doing a diversion, he wakes up on the ring. His name is Tyler, like Tyler Robinson, and he's called the Executioner. Okay,
Jesus.
Weird. And then the tropical storm that hits in the film is called Hurricane Jezebel. And for some of you guys that saw Megan Kelly just did a piece. That's the name of the online magazine that allegedly hired witches in August to put a hex on Charlie. And the film, parts of the film were filmed at the Trump Taj Mahal and Hotel Casino. And the secret camera, which films the assassination, but the videographer doesn't let anyone know. And guess what the tagline is of the movie?
The secret camera is an all-seeing eye. It's a single eye. They show all the symbologies in there.
Believe everything except your eyes.
So that's
the secret camera, which
that's
films
the subtitle of the movie. The movie is called Snake Eyes. And the subtitle of the movie is Believe Everything Except Your Eyes.
The assassination, but the videographer doesn't let anyone know. And guess what the tagline is of the movie? Believe everything except your eyes.
All right, so it's probably nothing, it's probably nothing. I'm just making nothing out of this, but I just wanted to pull all this together for you because I find it interesting at the very least. At the very least, it's interesting. So the movie is called Snake Eyes. The year on the Chinese calendar is called we're in the year of the snake, 2025. The serpent is associated with the tribe of Dan, but there's another animal that's associated with the tribe of Dan that you need to understand. And, it's probably just a coincidence, but the honeybee, this is, me asking the AI program on X, are honeybees associated with the tribe of Dan? This is what the AI says. Yes, honeybees are associated with the tribe of Dan. So not only is the serpent a symbol and associated with the tribe of Dan, honeybees are associated with the tribe of Dan. Honeybees are associated with the tribe of Dan in certain esoteric and historical traditions, particularly through symbolic and legendary connections to the biblical figure Samson. And Samson was from the tribe of Dan, and the story of Samson is in the book of Judges. A prominent member of the tribe of Dan, Samson was. Biblical foundation. The association stems primarily from the story of Samson in the book of Judges, chapter 14. While traveling to Timrah, Samson encounters a young lion, which is lion's whelp is another symbol for the tribe of Dan. A young lion, which he kills with his bare hands. Later, he returns to the lion's carcass and finds a swarm of bees inside it producing honey. He scoops out the honey and uses the incident as a basis for a riddle that he poses to the Philistines during his wedding feast. So the honeybees are associated with the tribe of Dan, and the honeybees are also associated with the state of Utah and very important in the Mormon faith. You can see the beehive here and the honeybees, even on their flag, you can see the beehive. Utah is actually called the beehive state. But it's probably all coincidence. Probably, there's nothing to this. I just wanted to share this with you guys. It was very interesting. Again, it probably means nothing. But do your own research. We're going to get back into Jewish history in the next podcast on Friday. We're going to get into the Babylonian captivity and the siege of Jerusalem, of Babylon, and what happens in that story. Hope you guys have a great week, and I'll see you on Friday.